Hello and welcome. In today's exciting episode, I will be making this lovely vintage style Chanel type jacket. So let us begin. So this is the pattern I'm using, McCall's 6041. It's out of print, but you can still get copies on eBay and Etsy. Just make sure when you purchase it that it's a reputable seller with 4 or 5 stars and that all the pieces are there. It's been almost a decade since I made this pattern, made up this pattern into a jacket. So I just wanted to use a plain fabric for the wearable mock-up, because I mean this Linton tweed is very Gucci-esque and it is fabulous, but yeah, it would have been just so noticeable if I hadn't done the pattern matching well in this fabric. So I decided to make the first one with the navy. And it was a good thing because this pattern, as soon as I started cutting out the pieces and putting it together, oh, it's an absolute nightmare. What they've done, because tweed can be quite bulky, and the front two, the finished one. So the front two panels, this is the front outside panel and the front inside panel of the lining. They're both tweed, so the front panels can be quite bulky. So at the bottom, what they've done on the pattern is just cut off this random amount. So yeah, I don't know if that's just a McCall's quirk that they do in a lot of McCall's patterns, because I mostly use Vogue, and so anyway, I found that really difficult to navigate, and I think that's probably why they got so many complaints about this particular pattern, that they discontinued it. Anyway, so I made this one up, well, half made it. I haven't sewn the lining to the outer jacket yet, but anyway, I made it up enough to understand what all the problems were. So once I'd done that, I set the navy aside and I got out the pattern pieces again and just made a modification. So here are the pattern pieces. Piece 1 and 2 are for the A and B cup, so those were the pieces I was using. And so literally all I did was just add back that random length that they'd cut off the bottom of the front center panel. So yeah, and once you add that back, it allows you to construct the jacket in the correct order, because they just made this stupid mistake of cutting off this extra bulk right at the start instead of waiting until like step 12 or something. And then because they made that stupid error, they had to change every step of how the jacket was constructed, because obviously if you cut a chunk off the bottom, then you don't really have a hemline anymore. Everything else is even, but your front, it looks like your 2 front teeth are missing on the bottom of your jacket. It just does not make sense. And I think most sewers, because I know I did this and I'm used to sewing jackets, I think most sewers would just line up the bottom of the front panel with the bottom of everything else and just sew them together and assume they'd maybe done the notches wrong. But yeah, you have to have this gaping difference between the bottom of the front panel and the other panels. And yeah, anyway, it was very confusing and it threw out every other step of the jacket construction. So after I'd done the first one the way they said, then yeah, I just added that random amount back in. And as you can see, the dot is, I'm not sure whether you're metric or you think in inches, but as you can see, the length from the dot to the bottom and the dot to the bottom, now that I've added that random amount back, it's the same length. So they have a proper hemline now. So yeah, it just meant that I could construct the jacket the right way and not have to do all these bizarre steps just because the hemline was wrong. So yeah, I can see why they discontinued this pattern, but if you fix that one thing, then everything else about the pattern is pretty damn good. So yeah, so I fixed that, and then I traced a new front piece and then I cut out all my well, I didn't cut out my pieces. I'll show you what I did next. So I have cut out the pieces of the backing fabric, and I'm about to cut out the tweed pieces, but this is such a big obvious pattern that what I think I will do is pin the front and the side front pieces together, sew them together, and then yeah, cut out the entire front of the jacket as one piece. I'll cut the lining as a separate piece, the inner front lining as a, that has to be tweed. I'll cut that out as a separate piece, but for the front too, I think I'll just do that so that the pattern matching is more perfect and easier. So I have machine sewn the pieces together. Then I opened up the seam allowance and stitched down the seam allowance, and there is a bit of a curve on the bust obviously, but what you do is you just mold it to the fabric as you pin the pieces down. And this is, in my opinion, this is more of a House of Dior way of doing things, but in the 21-22 Chanel Couture collection they actually did a jacket this way. I'll insert a picture of the jacket, but if you also go to there's a Luke, there's a YouTuber, fashion YouTuber, who went backstage and interviewed the seamstresses who made the jacket, and they briefly explain their process. So I'll link that, but yeah, it's that particular part of that particular interview only lasted a few seconds, so don't get your hopes up. He does interview a lot of different people, but only a couple of comments relate to jackets. Most of them were about dresses and techniques used on gowns. So yeah, I will get out the fabric now and put these down. Okay, here is the tweed laid out. If you don't know how to lay out your tweed, just put it on the table, and to straighten it, you put one hand in each diagonal corner. So put your left hand, I don't know my left from my right, sorry, your left up there and your right one down in the bottom, and stretch it out, and then lift your right hand up, put it in that corner, and put your left hand down there, and it sort of equally stretches them, and then you can see, and then you just sort of smooth it out. It sounds confusing, but once you have the tweed on the table, it will make perfect sense. Okay, so this is very directional, and I have decided that I want the green lines to be vertical, because that's just what I've decided. You do you, but that's what I want for my jacket. So yeah, normally I would then rotate everything by 90 degrees, but with this I can't. So I'm going to have to pin the pieces and cut them on this first half, then move it all up, the side hanging off the table at the moment, and cut the other pieces. So I will lay out the first half of the pieces. So I pinned everything down very, very carefully and molded this one, the front pieces, to perfection. But then I got out the back centerpiece and just measured it on the extra fabric, and it's like just the tiniest bit too short. So I was going to just pull up this arm here, unpin that, and pin the back and the side back there. But of course they don't fit. So now I have to take up everything. I take all the pins out and play Tetris again. And yeah, if I pin these up the other way so that the bottom was up there and the top was here, then I would have had room, because I just need like just the tiniest amount. But yeah, back to the starting board. Okay, this is take 2 of making the pattern pieces fit, and I've managed to get everything to fit. I just sort of put a third of the table on the third on the top of the table at a time and worked my way around. So everything is on there now. I think since this was such a saga, I might sort of block interface the pieces, meaning I'll just stitch the hand sew the backing to the fabric, to the tweed, before I cut any of the pieces out, just because I've got long COVID and standing up is presenting such a problem at the moment, and just, you know, exerting too much energy. I know it sounds ridiculous, but yeah, I just don't think I can stand up to cut out the pieces. But yeah, this is a way to sort of get around that. I'll just stitch these down, and then hopefully tomorrow I'll have the energy to cut out the pieces. And or I suppose I could try doing it sitting down, but that sounds like a disaster in the making. Anyways, so yeah, I will do that now. The attaching the netting, the support layer to the tweed. Okay, this is actually working really well. I think I might maybe do the stitching down, stitching the backing to the tweed at a much earlier stage than I usually do, because it's so much easier when all the pieces are flat, especially the sleeves are always, because they're so narrow and you have to sort of fit one arm inside and one arm outside. It's always tricky to do the sleeves once they're 3D, but yeah, when they're flat, yeah, I'm thinking about always doing the stitching them and backing to the tweed this early on. Anyway, so I've done one piece. I've got everything else to go, but yeah, I think I'll cut a piece, then stitch a piece, then cut it off, then move the fabric along a bit, inch it along, and do the next piece, and so on and so on. So I finished doing the stitching the backing fabric to the tweed on all the panels. Then I cut them out and I've pinned them all together so they're ready to sew. And yeah, it looks beautiful. I'm definitely considering doing it this way all the time, because look how much fabric I have left. I mean, it takes a lot longer to yeah, just do the really precise placement, but ooh, that's a lot of leftover fabric. I want to do a few Frankenstein jackets, so you know, where you have one piece out of this, or two pieces out of this, and then two pieces out of another tweed, and you know, and you make the whole jacket sort of kind of patchwork, but not really. So yeah, this is definitely getting kept for a project like that. I'm very happy. Okay, so yeah, I still have to do the sleeves. I had to set them aside so I could do this part. But yeah, I'm very happy with this. So I'll pack this all to the side and I'll do the sleeves. Then I will sew all the seams together. I'm on the home straight. I just have the under sleeves to go. Everything else is done. But I noticed there's a slight curve on the back seam of the sleeve, on the underarm, and maybe you'll see it better on this side, and there. So just for the last 3 inches, it's sort of curved and comes in. I really like that, and yeah, you'll see later on, it makes the sleeve, considering this is has a lot of ease and it's sort of a relaxed fit, the actual shoulders and the tops of the sleeves are quite delicate and beautiful. And yeah, I might sort of, my the Vogue pattern that I usually make, the slim fit one, just keeps the line going straight up. It doesn't curve it in at all. And yeah, I find the top of the sleeves can be, so the top of the sleeves, not the shoulder, the inner sleeve, it's like underneath, can be a little bit boxy. So yeah, I might try rounding, like just taking the smallest bit out of it, both the undersleeve and the actual sleeve, and see if that works. The Vogue one is so slim fit, there's not much room, but I think there would be room to do that. Yeah. Anyway, that's what interesting things I am thinking about as I finish this hand stitching. I'll get back to it now. So all the pieces have been stitched, the backing to the tweed on every panel. Then all the pieces were cut out and I've pinned them all together. So now they are ready to be sewn. So I shall get out the sewing machine, sew all these seams up. So all the seams, long seams are sewn together, and this is what the front piece looks like. It's upside down, obviously, but ooh, pattern matching to perfection because it's just one piece on the outside. So yeah, next step is to pin the front top to the back top on both sides, like so. Actually, that's not very easy to see, is it? Well, I sort of pinned it with the just so that I could pin back the seam allowance, which isn't stitched down yet. So yeah, I will now machine sew these two. Now the torso is basically a whole piece. I've done those tops and everything else is sewn together. I've also done the sleeves. Now it is time to pin back the seam allowance at every seam and hand stitch those down on with the sleeves and the torso. So I will do that now, and once that's done I will do the cuffs, turn them up, pin them and hand stitch them, and also the torso of the jacket. And because I've modified the pattern, I can do the whole thing at once. This is very cool. If you watch the other video where I do the pattern as written, it's quite the saga, and I complain and kick and scream about it the entire time. So yeah, look forward to that one. But for now, I will get this stitching done. I have finished sewing all the seams down. So the next step is to hem the cuffs and hem the body of the jacket. So I have pinned my hem. The pattern instructions suggest, tell you to do a 4 centimeter hem, but I've done a 3 centimeter, which is 1 inch. And normally you would also have to change the lining, but I'll show you a finished jacket I have. This is a finished jacket, and as you can see, it already has more than enough ease in the silk lining, so I don't think I need to add any more. These cuffs are a little bit trickier than most to hem because normally you can just, when you still have the sleeve inside out, you can do it from inside and then turn the whole thing out, but it's too tight to do that on this particular pattern, and I like the finish, so I haven't changed and given more ease just in the edge, like in the last inch, so that you can do that. I've left the pattern as is, but it does mean that you have to turn the sleeves out unhemmed and then pin the seam allowance, just very carefully pin, and then you sort of hold the sleeve up and very carefully turn in that inch of fabric. And once you've done that, I sort of hold the sleeve and take out the pin, and that's sort of in horizontal at the moment, and then sort of put it in vertical. I'm not sure you can see. Yeah, so I just took that pin out and put them down that way, and you sort of go round to do all of that. And then once you've done that, then you just stitch it down. So it's a little bit tricky, but not really. The cuffs and hem are all done. Now it is time to set the sleeves. So I will pin them on, then sew them. The sleeves are pinned, so now it is time to get the machine out and sew them. Okay, I think those sleeves look pretty good. And can we take a moment to admire my pattern matching? I'm not really a pattern matching type person, but this method of, well, it's sort of block facing at the start, and then yeah, it sort of feels much slower because you're doing a lot of hand sewing to begin with, and you have to be really, really careful with the placement. But I mean, the results kind of speak for themselves. I've obviously just folded under the front, the other panel that's the front of the lining, so that's why it's a bit dodgy looking. But those shoulders are beautiful, and yeah, I am like look, I'm sort of laying out all my fabric, calculating what else I can make with it. Let's get back to this jacket. So yeah, I'm pretty happy with those. It's sort of looking a bit puffy if you don't know what a jacket looks like at this stage of construction. But once the top stitching goes in, and once I trim down the underarm seam allowance and then stitch down the remaining seam allowance inside each of the sleeves, it won't look so sort of puffy. And also you sort of have to do the collar, and once you've sewn the collar you can cut some of it down, and once that's done it sits much better on the neck. So yeah, sort of ignore the massive broad shoulders going into a really thin waist triangle look that's there at the moment. It evens out once you do the next few steps, but those shoulders, I am very happy with them. Very happy indeed. Okay, so now I have to turn the jacket back inside out and reinforce my seams around the sleeves, because I just did them once. And once I've done that, I will cut down the excess seam allowance under each sleeve in the bottom half, and then I will stitch down all the excess, and then I will be back. I have finished the sleeves, sewing down the seam allowance. As you can see, it's still too tight at the neckline, so which affects the way the entire jacket sits. But just in general, I mean, look at that pattern matching. Out of 1 meter of tweed, I'm just, well done me for getting, normally when you only buy 1 meter, you just cannot, there's not even the option to try and pattern match. So that's why I'm giving myself a gold star on this one. There it is from the front. I have not made this jacket in, it has to be almost a decade, I think. And I really like it. It's reminding me of that Dolce & Gabbana jacket that's black, and it's got this massive thick band of gold beading. I'll find a photo of it and show it to you. But yeah, and I do have some black fabric, some black tweed, so yeah, maybe that's why I bought it all those years ago. Anyway, so now that the outer jacket is done, it's time to do the lining. So I will leave this up here on the side table, and I will get out the silk and the navy silk, which has finally arrived. It was ordered in February. And yeah, I shall cut out the pieces for the lining. So here is the navy Carolina Herrera silk. It's a crepe finish. Normally I use the standard silk for lining, it's nice and shiny. This one's a little bit adulting for me, but my actual Chanel jacket that I bought, you know, from Chanel Boutique has crepe lining, so I always think this is very grown up whenever I use it. But yeah, the navy silk in the Shein, sort of, you can get one that looks black, or you can get one that sort of looks more royal blue. And yeah, I really don't like it when the navy is too bright and looks sort of royal blue. So yeah, this is a good one in my opinion for this jacket, which is, I mean, once you get up close you can see the other colors, but yeah, just it feels like navy is a good color to line this with. So here we go, and through the magic of editing, there we have the lining. So basically just cut out all the bits, and it's sort of a simplified jacket because it's, you know, well, the front panel of the lining is obviously tweed, and then you've got the side front, side backs, the back, and the two parts of the sleeves. So you just cut them all out, assemble them the same way you assemble the jacket, and there are pleats in the center back, so you just have to sew them. Make sure you knot at the top so it doesn't come undone on each one, and then yeah, sew everything together and then attach the sleeves. And as I did hand finish the seam allowance on the jacket, I do also on the lining. So yeah, I just love the finish. I know some people don't like the look of hand stitching or whatever, but it just feels so much nicer than machine stitching, and I quite like the look. So now that my lining is done, it is time to pin the side front to the, we basically have to make one big garment. So yeah, I'm just going to pin the lining to the rest of the jacket, and once it's pinned I will sew it together. So once you've sewn together the front panel of the lining to all the silk panels, then you just pin the tops together. So this is the center back, side back, and side front center and front side, and you just pin them together and then carefully sew them along. So to attach the sleeve, I had to sew them together just at the very edge of the shoulder along to the first notch, but obviously I didn't have the front center panel, the tweed panel then, so I couldn't sew the whole thing. So yeah, this is a little bit fiddly, but it's just so much easier making the silk, the entire silk as one piece and the entire tweed as the outer jacket. So yeah, this is a little bit fiddly, but overall it saves you a lot of time, and it just protects the integrity of the tweed, which can unravel quite easily until it's securely stitched down to everything else. So yeah, so now that they're pinned, I will carefully sew them, and then once that's done, I just have to stitch down the do the top stitching of the, oh, this is the inside of my hand stitching. As you can see, it's not the greatest, neatest stitching in the world, but it looks quite nice from the outside. You basically don't see it from the outside, and it holds everything in place. And yeah, I just know I used to own a lot of vintage garments, and this is how it's done it always was done historically. And I just love the idea of someone opening up my work in 50 years or 100 years and going, look, they've done it the historical or the vintage way. So yeah, I guess that's why I do it the way I do it. Plus it just feels really nice when you wear it. Anyway, so now I'm going to machine sew this and do all the last hand stitching. So I'll do that now. Okay, I have stitched the seam allowance down on both sides. Now everything is all together in one garment. I like to refer to this as the octopus stage because there are four sleeves and they just go everywhere. I know an octopus has 8 legs, but that's just what I call it. Now it is time to turn the entire garment inside out so that we can match up the collars of the outer jacket and the lining, and we will pin then sew down the collar. I have pinned my 2 collars together with the right sides together, so I'm working on the inside of the inside, and I also just put an extra pin in each of the fronts, just making sure that the side seam is straight. So now I will just trim off the little excess bits so I have a clear sight line to the edge, and then I will go around and carefully sew my beautiful curved line, making sure that the left and the right side are perfectly mirrored so that when I turn the jacket out, the 2 front corners of the collar look perfect. So, and yeah, once I'm happy with the sew line, if you mess it up, just carefully unpick it and do it again. But once you're happy with your sew line around the collar, then just go over it again with the machine to reinforce it. So I'll do that now. I have sewn all my layers together. Now it is time to clip the curves and then turn the entire jacket inside out. Okay, I have turned the jacket in the correct way. Now I just need to get something sharp and push out carefully, push out those corners a little more. Then I will pin down all the layers together so I know where to top stitch, and then we will put it on the dress form to see how it's looking. Okay, so everything is pinned together. It always looks a bit bumpy and weird when the pins are in. It's hard for it to sit properly, but as you can see, the shoulders look absolutely gorgeous, and the curves on the fronts are matching. So yeah, now I just have to top stitch all the way along the bottom of the front panel, up the front panel, right around the collar and back. The thing that you have to be careful with when doing this is you have to remember that there's no yoke, it's just silk on the back. So just make sure you roll it in 1 millimeter or 2 as you're stitching, and make sure you cannot see you can only see tweed, never lining at the top. But yeah, I mean, obviously if you want to, you can make yourself modify the pattern so that there is a yoke. All you do is take the back center piece and trace yourself a copy of the original one, and then just draw a line on where you want the bottom of your yoke to be and the top of your silk lining to start. So this is obviously, it's just one big piece on this one, whereas on this one you see how there's a yoke. But in my opinion, it's more accurate to have a full silk lining. Or if you do make your own yoke piece, just make sure once you draw the line for where you want your tweed yoke piece to be and your silk piece to be, once you cut them, you're going to have to add seam allowance back to each side. So just remember to do that. But in my opinion, it's more accurate for a vintage style Chanel jacket to have a full silk lining. So yeah, that's why I leave it. But it is a little annoying when you get to this point. So now I will do the top stitching. So I have finished all the top stitching, and this tweed really does make a beautiful jacket. And I think that I'm so glad I waited for the navy silk to get here. I think, which I ordered back in February. I really think, because to me this tweed is very Gucci, and having the navy lining just makes it very, very Gucci in my opinion. I mean, the silhouette is still a vintage Chanel, but you know, I like the juxtaposition, and I like that the Gucci look is cohesive, like there's not some wrong silk. Anyway, so yeah, I've finished basically. There's just a couple of steps left to go. I'm going to do a beaded trim, so I'm not going to stitch down the silk. But if you just want a plain jacket, then the next step is to pull through the lining sleeves right into the actual sleeves and turn down the lining and pin it to the cuffs. And once you've done that on both arms, then you have to do the same at the bottom of the jacket. So you just turn under the hem, turn onto the edge, pin it down, and then hand sew that down. And then traditionally you would also attach a gold chain right along the back, because, well, silver, if it's silver, would go better, but obviously on this one gold would go better. So you just hand sew a chain on the back to weight down the back of the jacket so that it looks beautiful from the back. So now, but yeah, as I said, I'm going to do beading for this, so I will be leaving the linings open for the moment, because yeah, you have to get into the interior of the jacket to be able to stitch down the trim. Okay, so now we will put it up on the dress form and have a look. There we go. I really am quite happy with this jacket. I'm trying to decide what handbag will be my default handbag to wear with it. I'm thinking maybe the black Chanel, but I do love how these clash quite nicely. And they are Italian. Gucci and Valentino are Italian brands. Anyways, so this is the finished jacket. Those sleeves, in particular those shoulders, are beautiful. It's just that sleeves are so difficult to set, so that's why I admire them. But I also like how I had enough fabric to pattern match at the back, because when I made the red plaid one in February, I just did not have enough. Like, there was not even an inch to spare. I couldn't pattern match right across the back, and it bugs me. It does bug me, as much as I say I don't care about pattern matching. Yeah, there are some things that really irk me. So yeah, I'm quite happy with this one, and I'm so glad I made all those modifications to the pattern. It's so much easier to put together now. I really like this method, and I think I'll try the block facing on yeah, all the delicate tweeds. This one I got a little bits of gold in my eye a few times, which is quite painful. So yeah, be very careful when you're working with metallics. It happens all the time. It's not particular to this particular brand or anything. But yeah, I'm quite happy with this. So have fun making your own vintage style Chanel type jacket with a lovely, lovely tweed. And yeah, next episode I will be making beaded trim for this lovely lady. So I'll maybe see you then.